The sun hadn't fully broken the horizon, but Ouagadougou was already alive. Vendors pulled open metal doors, children sprinted barefoot through alleyways, and distant calls to prayer echoed, like ancient incantations over concrete rooftops. A soft golden haze settled on the city, casting long shadows over a place that had grown used to silence, especially when it came to gold. But inside the presidential compound, silence wore a different face. President Ibrahim Traoré sat alone in a dimly lit office, blinds drawn tight. The usual murmur of aides and ministers was absent. Just the sound of a fan spinning slowly overhead, and the soft creak of leather as he leaned back in his chair. He held a manila folder in his hands, worn at the edges, unmarked, except for a single word printed on the cover. Classify. Inside, a report handwritten by Captain Sorrow, his most trusted intelligence officer. It detailed something strange, something dangerous. A cargo vessel, the Golden Arrow, had been spotted floating near the Gulf of Guinea. No flag, no manifest, no known port of departure. Yet its hull bore the scars of hard labor, and its decks glimmered faintly, almost unnaturally, in the satellite images. The captain's conclusion was chilling. The ship is smuggling stolen gold. Our gold. It never left legally. Traoré's fingers tightened on the folder until the edges bent. His jaw flexed. For years, the veins of Burkina Faso had been drained dry. Gold taken from the dirt by calloused hands ended up in luxury vaults in Geneva and Dubai. Not anymore. He picked up the red phone. Get me Sorrow. Immediately. 2 hours later, in a bunker-like command room carved into a hillside near the coast, Sorrow stood before a digital map glowing cold blue. She's hiding near the ruins of Port Saka, he told his team. Lights off. Tracker disabled. That ship doesn't want to be found. Private Joseph, a wiry young officer barely out of the academy, cleared his throat. Sir, if I may? Sorrow nodded. The gold's likely inside steel containers. But without boarding, we can't prove anything. Then we board, Sorrow replied flatly, but quietly. Meanwhile, back in the capital, President Traoré met with a small circle, his top generals, the head of customs, and one unexpected guest, a journalist named Mariam Cohn. She stood out in the room of uniforms and polished shoes. She wore a simple brown headscarf, ink-stained fingers, and eyes that had seen too much. Mariam had once reported on child labor in the gold mines. She knew this wasn't just a story, it was a wound. I want the world to know, the president told her. But not now. Timing is everything. Mariam nodded slowly. When the truth breaks, I'll be ready to bleed with it. 3 operatives disguised as port maintenance workers moved silently through fog and salt air. The Golden Arrow loomed ahead, massive and dark, a floating monolith wrapped in secrecy. The guards were half asleep, distracted. One of the operatives, Officer Karim, stepped forward with a forged work order. Supervisor Musa sent us, he said, voice roughened by dust and fatigue. Inspection before dawn. The guards grumbled, waved them in. No questions. No logs. Inside, the ship was a tomb. Corridors reeked of diesel and mildew. Cameras were planted behind rusted beams, under metal grates. And then they found it. Dozens of containers, each one sealed tight, but one had been left slightly ajar. Inside, stacks of gold bars, some still coated in clay dust. Others had names etched in faded black marker villages. Not banks. Villages. No paperwork. No markings. Just wealth, raw and naked, stolen from the earth and hidden at sea. Karim whispered into his mic, we got it. Sending footage now. The footage hit Sorrow's desk within the hour. He didn't wait. He called the president. Ibrahim, it's worse than we thought. The entire ship. It's full. A pause. Then, the president spoke softly. Prepare for Operation Golden Justice. Dawn cracked open like thunder. Jets screamed over the capital. Troops mobilized, not in fear, but in hope. It was a sight Burkina Faso hadn't seen in decades. Its military moving not against its people, but for them. President Traoré appeared on national television. No tie, no stript. My fellow Burkinabe, our land has been plundered. But this time, the thieves left a trail. And today we follow it. That night, the ship still sat at dock. Lights low. Guards smoking on the ramp. They didn't see it coming. From the shadows, military forces emerged. This time, not as workers, but warriors. Cameras rolling. Warrant in hand. Drop your weapons. An officer barked. You are under arrest for international smuggling and theft. Some smugglers ran. Most froze. None fought. Justice didn't knock. It stormed the gates. Back in the capital celebration, markets erupted in song. Women ululated from rooftops. Children danced barefoot in the dust. The air itself felt lighter. For once, the people were not just told they mattered, they saw it. But Traoré didn't join the festivities. He sat in his office again, hands folded over a new folder. This one thicker. More names. Ministers. Diplomats. CEOs. Even generals. This goes deeper than I thought, he told his advisor, Mr. Bao. Bao glanced at the list. Some of these people, they have the ears of presidents in Europe. Ties to global banks. Traoré looked up, then let it shake. Let them know we're not afraid to tear down what they've built on our backs. Thousands of kilometers away, in a mirrored boardroom in Europe, 6 figures sat around a long black table. A screen showed footage from the raid. The gold. The arrests. This young president. One man hissed. He's embarrassing us. Another nodded. Then we cut his legs. A woman leaned forward, her lipstick blood red. Not with guns. With stories. And so it began. Fake headlines. Twisted reports. Whispered lies. Is President Traoré hiding the gold? Gold for the people? Or gold for power? Burkina Faso faces economic collapse after military seizure. Even local stations picked up the stories. Some paid, others threatened. Miriam Combs stormed into the newsroom, fists trembling. These are lies, she cried. Her editor avoided her eyes. Some of our colleagues, they've taken money. She ran to the palace. Mr. President, they're rewriting the truth. They're calling you the thief now. He was calm, almost too calm. We won't answer with noise, he said. We'll answer with proof. The next morning, a convoy of armored trucks rolled through the capital. Inside, every stolen bar of gold. Soldiers marched beside them. Drones flew overhead. Citizens lined the streets, waving, crying, cheering. One old man raised a clenched fist and shouted, "It's coming home." But something was stirring in the shadows. Someone, inside the president's own circle, had begun to speak to the enemy. The whispers grew louder. A name appeared. And the name wasn't just familiar. It was sacred. It was Karim. Nightfall settled over Ouagadougou like a warning. The air was heavy. Not from rain, but from something deeper. Something watching. Inside the presidential palace, President Ibrahim Traoré stood at a window, staring into the shadows beyond the gates. The convoy had arrived safely. The gold was now secured in the vault of the National Bank, guarded by the army and tracked by drones. But the president was not at peace. On the table behind him was a folder. Not the first, not the last, but this one hurt. Inside were photos, bank records, call logs, evidence that someone in his inner circle had betrayed him. Captain Sorrow stood beside him, eyes somber. We traced the signal, sir. The leak came from inside this building. From someone who knew every step of Operation Golden Justice before we executed it. The president turned, face unreadable. Who? Sorrow hesitated. Sir, it's Karim. The name hit the room like thunder. Karim, the man who once bled beside Traoré in the bush, who carried ammunition through the rain and shared stale bread by candlelight, who had stood beside him not just as a soldier, but as a brother. No, the president said, shaking his head. There must be a mistake. We thought so too, Sorrow said quietly. But we have recordings. Offshore accounts, $2 million in his wife's name. He's been feeding intel to foreign handlers for weeks. President Traoré sat heavily. The weight of betrayal settled into his chest like stone. That night, he walked alone in the palace gardens. His steps slow, his thoughts louder than the crickets. How many men had called him brother, only to sell their loyalty to the highest bidder? How many would smile in the light, then whisper death in the dark? The next morning, Karim was summoned. He arrived with the same warm smile he always wore. "You called for me, my brother?" Traoré motioned to the chair across from him. "Sit." He pushed a folder across the table. "Explain this." Karim's fingers shook as he flipped through the documents. The color drained from his face. "This is a lie. Someone's setting me up." The president's voice dropped low. "I trusted you, Karim. I broke bread with you. And now I have to ask, were you ever with me? Or were you always just waiting to trade me in?" Karim stood quickly. "Ibrahim, please." But two security officers entered. Quiet, firm. President Traoré didn't raise his voice. "You will be questioned. If the people find you guilty, you will answer to them." As Karim was let out, he turned one last time. "I did what I had to. You don't understand who you're fighting." But the president said nothing. He simply closed the folder. News of Karim's arrest spread like fire through dry grass. Some wept, some cursed, others refused to believe it. But Traoré didn't hide it. He addressed the nation. "My people, today I lost a brother, but I gained the truth. And if we are to build a new Burkina Faso, then truth must live above friendship, above loyalty, above blood. No one is above the law." The people clapped, not out of celebration, but out of respect. During the interrogation, something unexpected was found. A journal. Small. Leather-bound. Hidden in a false wall behind Karim's desk. Inside everything. Names, dates, plans, payments. Every meeting with foreign handlers. Code names. Coordinates. Even floor plans of the National Bank's gold vault. One name appeared more than any other, Delgado. A shadowy figure. An international gold smuggler with links across West Africa and Europe. For over a decade, Delgado had operated behind fake companies and diplomatic covers, bleeding the continent dry. President Traoré stared at the journal. Now we know who we're really up against. But far away, in a secluded estate tucked into the Swiss Alps, Delgado was watching. The screen on his desk showed clips of the arrest, the gold, the speech. He hurled his whiskey glass against the wall. "That boy has gone too far." An aide stepped in. "Sir, the journal. They found it." Delgado's eyes narrowed. "Then we no longer play games. Call the mercenaries." He looked into the fire, face cold. "Take him out." 2 days later, a message appeared in the inbox of the Burkina Faso National Security Agency. An untraceable email. 4 words. "They will kill him." It came with a time, a place. Independence Square. Noon. President Traoré was scheduled to deliver a national address to mark the return of the gold. Sorrow burst into the president's office. "Sir, there's an active plot. At least 5 armed attackers. Possibly more. We need to cancel the speech." But the president shook his head. "If I run now, they win. Let them come. We will be ready." March 12th, Independence Square. A sea of people. Flags. Drums. Hope. From all across the nation they came. Old men in sandals. Women with babies tied to their backs. Students waving placards of hope. On stage stood a wooden podium, draped in cloth the color of earth. But hidden among the celebration were 5 men. Mercenaries dressed in stolen military uniforms. Weapons hidden in camera bags and coolers. They moved with precision. Timing. Intent. In a nearby command post, Sorrow watched drone feeds and camera angles. Private Amadou, a sharp-eyed young agent, noticed something odd. A man in uniform. No unit badge. No interaction. Pressing something in his ear. Possible hostile. "Section B," he whispered. Agents closed in. Quietly. No panique. Inside his bag, blueprints, a suppressed pistol, a schedule. 1 attacker down. Then 2 more. One spotted moving toward the side of the stage. Another caught climbing onto a nearby rooftop with a sniper rifle. 4 down. But one was still missing. Noon struck. The crowd erupted as President Traoré stepped onto the platform. He raised his hand. The chants faded. "My people, today we celebrate not just the return of gold, but the return of dignity. This land belongs to us, and no force, no foreign hand can take it again." Cheers rose like thunder. And then, a scream. Gun. Miriam, the journalist. She had seen the last mercenary, disguised as a cameraman. A pistol drawn. 2 guards lunged. The gun fired too late. The bullet missed. Traoré was shoved to the ground. Chaos erupted. But within seconds, the attacker was pinned, disarmed. The president stood up, dusted off his jacket, and returned to the microphone. He looked out over the crowd. Even now, they try to silence us. But we are not afraid. This gold is yours, and our future belongs to no one but the people of Burkina Faso. The crowd exploded. Tears, dances, laughter through pain. Later that evening, all 5 mercenaries were shown to the public alive. No blood, just truth. Interpol confirmed Delgado had issued the hit order. Arrest warrants were issued across borders. Karim's journal was published in full. No redactions. And within days, the first projects began. A hospital in Kédougou, a school for girls in Dori, roads in Bobo Dioulasso, clean water stations in the Sahel. For once, gold didn't disappear. It built something. The people whispered a new name for their president, the son of the soil. But in the shadows, another voice stirred. Not Delgado, not Karim. Someone else. Someone still inside. They didn't speak in meetings. They didn't show up on cameras. But they had access. And in a secure government facility one night, they walked past 3 guards. Unseen, unchallenged. They inserted a USB into the presidential data terminal, transferred files, then vanished. The next morning, Sorrow entered the command room. The monitors were off. Files corrupted. He turned to the IT chief. Who accessed this system last night? A pause. The man's face went pale. No one, sir. According to the logs, no one was here. But someone was. The morning after the failed assassination, Ouagadougou awoke with mixed emotions. Pride had filled the city the night before. Pride in survival. Pride in victory. Pride in reclaiming what was stolen. But with morning came something else. Whispers. Rumors. A chill that hadn't been there the day before. In the Presidential Cyber Command Center, a high-tech war room buried deep beneath the Ministry of Defense. Alarms were blinking red. Files gone. Surveillance logwiped. No footage from the previous night. No list of access points. Nothing. Sorrow's voice echoed against metal walls. You're telling me there's no record of who entered this room? The IT director, a balding man with sweat darkening his collar, shook his head. Sir, the system shows 0 logins. It's like it erased itself. Sorrow slammed his fist on the console. No system erases itself. Someone did this. Someone with clearance higher than mine. He turned toward the guard. Seal the palace. No one in, no one out. Until we find the ghost walking among us. President Traoré stood at the balcony of his office, looking out at the horizon. The wind carried the sound of celebration, but something inside him had already shifted. The people had won a battle, but the war was still breathing. He turned to Miriam, who sat quietly at the far end of the room. Her notebook was closed. That alone was strange. They're not done, he said. No, she replied, but neither are we. At the National Security Headquarters, an emergency intel review uncovered something disturbing. In the last 48 hours, a signal had been sent from inside the palace to a satellite server in Estonia. Encrypted, buried, invisible to regular scans. What was transferred? Unknown. Who sent it? Unknown. But the timing matched exactly with the security breach in the data room. Only 5 people in the country had access to that level of clearance. 3 were accounted for. One was Karim, already arrested. That left one name. Minister Boubacar Diallo. Diallo had served in government since the early 2000s. A polished technocrat. Fluent in French, Arabic, English, and the unspoken language of politics. He had served under 3 presidents. Always quiet, always efficient. He had built the digital infrastructure that now held the nation's gold reserves, energy grids, and presidential communications. And he had been invisible. That was his gift. He never stood out. Not too loud, not too bold, but always near power. Always watching. When questioned by internal investigators, Diallo denied everything. Calmly. I don't work with ghosts, he said. I catch them. But his eyes never quite matched his smile. That night, Sorrow and his team ran a silent operation. No uniformes. No sirens. Just 4 intelligence officers in civilian clothes slipping into Diallo's estate in the diplomatic zone. His home was like a museum. Bookshelves, art, old maps. Not a fingerprint out of place. But in a hidden room behind a false wall, they found it. 6 encrypted hard drives. A custom laptop running an untraceable OS. A burner phone with contacts linked to offshore shell companies. One folder was labeled Phoenix. Inside were blueprints of every secure government facility in Burkina Faso. Floor plans, exit tunnels, escape routes, and a list of names. Project restructure. It was a hit list. At the top, 1 Ibrahim Traoré. 2 Captain Sorrow. 3 Mariam Cohn. Diallo didn't run. When the security team brought him in, he simply buttoned his shirt, picked up a book, and walked calmly into the armored vehicle. Inside the interrogation room, he didn't flinch. You're playing a game you can't win, he told Sorrow. Traoré disrupted a 10-year operation. You think they'll let that stand? You think gold is the prize? Gold is just the beginning. Sorrow leaned in. Who are they? Diallo smiled. Who are you without us? Then he said no more. Not a word. President Traoré reviewed the files personally. The names on the list. The money trails. The digital fingerprints leading back to governments, corporations, and think tanks spread across 5 continents. And suddenly, he understood. This wasn't just about Burkina Faso. This was about every African country that dared to unplug itself from dependency. It was a warning. A silent war. The next day, Traoré stood before his cabinet. No cameras. No press. Just men and women sworn to serve. He placed the folder on the table. We're surrounded by enemies in suits. Smiling devils. They don't come with tanks anymore. They come with data. They don't drop bombs. They drop loans, silence, and bribes. And now they're inside our walls. He looked at each of them. From this day forward, everything changes. Phase 2 began. Encrypted communication systems were rebuilt from scratch. Satellite networks were rerouted. All foreign aid contracts were frozen for review. But Traoré didn't stop there. He created a covert task force, Project Koba, named after an ancient lion said to roam the Sahel during times of war. Only 5 people knew its full structure. Its mission: track foreign assets inside Burkina Faso, monitor high-level data traffic, and protect the president at all costs. Because deep in the digital web, more whispers began. A new target, a new plan. Delgado was no longer in control. Someone else had taken the reins. A faceless figure from the intelligence underworld, known only by one name: Spectre. And Spectre didn't deal in bribes. He dealt in erasure. Entire movements, leaders, countries, deleted. And now, Burkina Faso was next. The lion had roared. Now the shadows stirred. Burkina Faso was changing. Roads were being built. Villages once forgotten were getting schools, water, clinics. But beneath that progress, an invisible clock ticked, louder each night, echoing in the minds of those in power. President Ibrahim Traoré had faced smugglers, foreign corporations, mercenaries, and traitors. But the new threat wasn't loud. It didn't wear a suit. It didn't carry a gun. It wore silence like armor. It moved through wires. It had no fingerprints. No bordes. It was called Spectre. And Spectre had never failed. 2 weeks later, Presidential Situation Room. Captain Sorrow laid a map on the table. Dots pulsed on satellite imagery. Unregistered private jets landing in neighboring countries. Unexplained cyber attacks traced to microwave relays near embassies. Sir, he said, we believe Spectre has entered West Africa, possibly through one of the digital corridors built for humanitarian aid transfers. Traoré didn't speak. He stared at the blinking lights. A new war. No trenches. No uniformes. Just code, wire, misinformation, and silence. What's the motive? He asked. Sorrow answered without hesitation. They want to dismantle your credibility. Not kill you immediately. First, they erase your achievements. Then your face. Then your name. That evening, news broke. International outlets ran with headlines. Burkina Faso's gold projects under scrutiny. Mismanagement suspected. Whistleblower claims government manipulated gold reserve reports. Satellite imagery shows inconsistencies in project sites. All lies. But they spread like wildfire. Even African news outlets picked them up. Miriam Cohn stared at her screen in disbelief. She knew the tactic. Repetition turned fiction into memory. They're rewriting the story while we're still living it. She muttered. She gathered her team. We go local. We film the schools, the hospitals, the roads. Let the people tell the truth in their own words. Inside the digital intelligence lab beneath Ouagadougou, Project Koba's cyber division was in chaos. Spectre's signature had finally surfaced, buried deep inside a corrupted node used by a telecom partner. It was a ghost in motion. IP trails bouncing through Greenland and Mongolia. Drones rerouted mid-flight. A government procurement file edited in real time. We're not fighting a hacker, whispered the cyber director. We're fighting an AI-assisted intelligence cell. Possibly ex-CIA, maybe ex-Mossad. Traoré sat in the observation booth, watching code scroll like scripture. How do we fight something that doesn't bleed? The answer came from the shadows. You learn how it thinks before it moves. The voice belonged to an old man. Wrinkled hands. A scar that split his left brow. His name was Seko, a former intelligence operative from the Sankara era. Long retired. Long silent. But he had studied Spectre before it had a name. You're not their target, Seko said. Your hope is. Traoré frowned. Explain. Spectre doesn't assassinate bodies. It assassinates faith. Your people believe in you now. That makes you dangerous. But if they can make your people doubt you, even for a second, they'll win. Seko pointed to the map. They don't need to touch gold. They only need to touch perception. And then it happened. A video was leaked online. It showed President Traoré allegedly inside a luxury hotel in Dubai, counting stacks of dollars. The footage was grainy, but clear enough. Exclusive, Burkina Faso president caught in bribery scandal. Within minutes, it went viral. The palace issued a denial. The hotel didn't exist. The video was deepfake. But damage was done. Some believed it. Others didn't care. Doubt had entered the bloodstream. In a rural town near Kaya, a farmer sat in front of a radio, shaking his head. Even him. His wife replied, We don't know the truth anymore. Inside the palace, Traoré slammed the table. This is war. Soro nodded. Then we need to hit back. Not react, strike. They launched Operation Shadowline. Step 1. Trace the metadata from the leaked video. Step 2. Find the server origin. Step 3. Feed disinformation back, confuse the system. But Spectre anticipated them. Instead, they fed Traoré a fake intelligence drop. An intercepted message claiming Soro was compromised, that he had been offered $10 million to sabotage security at the gold vault. For a moment, just a moment, Traoré paused. Could it be? Could Soro? He shook the thought. No, I trust him. But Spectre had already won that round. Because doubt, even if unspoken, is poison. 3 nights later, Soro disappeared. No call. No message. His phone was found in the seat of his empty vehicle, parked at the base of a hill outside the capital. There was no blood. No struggle. Just one thing left behind. A single, blank flash drive. And on the dashboard, a handwritten note. Every lion can be silenced if it hunts alone. National panic followed. Rumors swirled. Soro defected. Inside the palace, Traoré stared at the wall. Soro had been his shield, his sword, his right hand. Now he was gone. But 200 kilometers away, deep in the Sicily forest, Soro was very much alive. Handcuffed, hooded, interrogated, by people he couldn't see. Voices speaking French, others in Russian. A translator whispered questions in English. Where's the backup key to the gold reserves? Who are the other members of Project Koba? What encryption is the president using? He said nothing. They shocked him, beat him, starved him. Still nothing. But they weren't trying to break him. They were recording him. In a studio halfway across the world, Spectre's media unit went to work. They took Sorrow's face, his voice, his expressions, and began building a new confession. One where he admitted to working for Traoré only to sabotage from within. One where he exposed secret camps and hidden Swiss accounts. The footage wasn't real, but it looked real, sounded real, and it was almost ready for release. Back in Burkina Faso, Miriam watched surveillance footage of Sorrow's last movements. Something didn't add up. The route his car took, off the scheduled path, the lack of roadside footage. She zoomed in frame by frame, and there, barely visible, a second shadow behind Sorrow's vehicle, mimicking his movement. Another car. Lights off. She raced to the palace. Mr. President, he didn't run. He was taken. President Traoré's face hardened. Then we take him back. He walked to the window and looked out over his country. Still healing. Still hopeful. They think we are weak. They think we are afraid. He turned to Miriam. Prepare the cameras. I have something to say. The next evening, the president appeared on national television. No suit. Just his fatigues. Dust still on his shoulders. My people. They want you to believe I am corrupt. That Sorrow betrayed us. That our hope was a dream. But hope is not a lie. Hope is the fire that they cannot extinguish. He paused. Looked directly into the lens. I swear to you, I will bring Sorrow home. I will finish what we started, even if I have to walk through fire to do it. Across the nation, screens lit up. Men stopped playing cards. Women left their pots boiling. Children sat quietly. The country listened, and the lion roared again. But deep in a cold concrete room, Sorrow's captors were nearly ready. The video would release in 48 hours. Traoré's name would crumble. Unless the clock was ticking. 48 hours. That's all they had. After that, the fake confession video of Captain Sorrow would go live across the globe. The footage would show him admitting to being a spy, claiming the gold operation was a front for embezzlement. Once released, even allies would turn cold. Borders would close. Aid would vanish. Investors would flee. The story would become history, no matter how false. And President Ibrahim Traoré would be finished. Inside the palace war room, the lights were low. Only the glow of screens and the hum of servers filled the silence. Where is he? The president asked. Cyber analyst Nadej pointed to a red blinking dot. We've narrowed the signal to a 3-square-mile radius in the Sicily forest. We tracked a drone Spectre used to test broadcast strength, but we need eyes on the ground. Traoré turned to Seko. The old intelligence officer leaned forward, tapping a knuckle on the table. We go in quiet. We extract Sorrow before that file reaches Spectre's final upload server. Can we trust the network won't leak it earlier? Nadej shook her head. They've engineered a smart release. If any node is compromised, the video splits, duplicates, and broadcasts on a time trigger. One wrong move, and it goes live. Then we don't move wrong, Traoré said. He stood. Initiate Operation Firewall. That night, inside an old communications bunker in the forest, Sorrow lay chained to a steel chair. His face was swollen, split lip caked in dried blood, but his eyes still burned. They played him clips, edited versions of his own voice. They made him listen to himself say things he never said. I work for foreign powers. I smuggled gold under the president's nose. The people are fools for believing in a soldier. But Sorrow didn't flinch. He whispered the same words again and again. Traoré is coming. Phase 1 infiltration. For commandos from Project Koba parachuted into the forest under cloud cover. No GPS. Only analog maps and satellite memory. They moved like shadows, guided by an embedded tracker hidden in Sorrow's wristwatch. A prototype too old for Spectre to detect. Within 6 hours, they reached the edge of the facility. An underground bunker shielded by an abandoned mining station. Thermal imaging showed 14 hostiles. 3 armed guards. 1 digital comms engineer. The rest, Spectre techs. But they weren't the target. The real threat sat deeper. A central AI-controlled upload terminal. It was voice-activated. Only Sorrow's voice could trigger it. That meant Spectre's plan wasn't to kill him. It was to use him. Phase 2, Digital Counterattack. Back in Ouagadougou, Miriam sat with Nadij and a covert network of African journalists, coders, and whistleblowers. Their task, create a counter-narrative. While the rescue unfolded, they would flood the net with real stories, photos of the gold-funded schools, interviews with farmers, videos of children drinking clean water. Then they'd hijack every hashtag Spectre tried to use and bury the fake video with truth. A digital uprising. A firewall of facts. Phase 3, the break-in. At 0300 hours, the commandos breached the perimeter. Silencers hissed. Flashbangs cracked like lightning. Inside, chaos. Spectre techs scrambled to destroy equipment. One man sprinted toward the upload trigger. But before he could press the terminal, a knife flew through the air, burying itself in his throat. Commander Awa, a tall, dreadlocked woman with eyes like night, cut Sorrow's chains herself. He winced but stood. "You're late," he croaked. Awa smiled. "You're heavy. Had to make room in the chopper." But the AI had already begun its sequence. 30 seconds. A robotic voice echoed through the walls. Voice match confirmed. Upload in progress. The text had spliced to speech. It was already triggering the system. Awa yelled, "Can we kill it?" Sorrow looked at the screen. "No, but we can jam it." He grabbed a loose cable from a wall and connected it to a metal desk. "Get ready to run." Then he smashed the circuit. The bunker flashed blue. Screens exploded in sparks. The upload froze at 91%. System locked. Data corrupted. They escaped into the trees just before the backup generator exploded. Flames reached the sky. But Sorrow was alive. The video was dead. And Spectre had failed. Hours later, as the sun rose over Ouagadougou, President Traoré stood before his people once again. This time, Sorrow stood behind him. Bruised but unbroken. The crowd wept. The president spoke. "They tried to rewrite our story, but we held the pen. And now, let this be known across the world. Burkina Faso will not be owned, silenced, or stolen. Not by gold. Not by lies. Not by Spectre. But far away, inside a cold vault somewhere in Geneva, a man in a black turtleneck watched quietly. Spectre had lost this round. But war doesn't end in one battle." He turned to a screen and typed one word into a new operation file. "Miriam." And just like that, the next target was chosen. The morning after Sorrow's rescue, the city didn't just wake up, it roared. Drums pounded from villages. Radios played the president's speech on repeat. Social media feeds overflowed with hashtag Sorrow returns and hashtag Golden Justice. And at the center of it all was Miriam Cohn, the woman whose videos had become Burkina Faso's mirror. Footage of children in new classrooms. Farmers drinking from clean wells. Pregnant mothers entering clinics for the first time in years. Her voice narrated it all. Calm. Real. Not dramatic. Just undeniable. And that was exactly what made her dangerous. Far away, Spectre reassembled. In a deep learning command center somewhere beneath Zurich, 6 analysts sat before biometric scanners. The video project had failed, but the threat was still alive. "She is their narrator," said the handler known only as Director 7. "She gives their story coherence. Remove her voice, and their reality fractures." Another figure, face blurred behind digital masking, responded. "Then we make the people doubt her. Not just her words, her soul." Operation Mirrorfall was greenlit. Day 1, the first whisper. An anonymous blog post surfaced. Miriam Cohn's documentaries are state-funded propaganda. Her brother owns a construction firm that just won a school building contract. Is she documenting corruption or covering it up? It was unsigned, but amplified by bots, shared by influencers who'd never followed her before. Miriam read it in silence. She wasn't shocked, just tired. She closed the laptop, opened her phone. 30 missed calls, messages, tweets, then a voice message from her uncle in Bamako. "Miriam, they say you're working for foreign money now. That you're lying to protect the president. Tell me it's not true." She didn't reply. She knew this playbook, but it still stung, because lies don't need to be believed by everyone. Just enough to make the truth look complicated. Day 3, the doubt campaign. Leaked screenshots showed alleged WhatsApp conversations between Miriam and a man listed as Agent Diallo. In them, she supposedly discussed how to soften the president's image and silence critical journalists. Fake. Every word. But the timing was perfect. It looked just real enough. Even her cameraman asked, "Boss, is there something you didn't tell me?" She fired him that afternoon. Her circle shrank overnight. Inside the presidential palace, President Traoré summoned her. When she entered, he didn't stand. He simply looked at her, tired eyes, shoulders slumped. "Are you okay?" he asked. Miriam didn't answer right away. Then she whispered, "They're not trying to kill me, Ibrahim. They're trying to break me so I kill myself." He nodded slowly. "They're afraid of your voice. That means it's still working." Day 5, the clone video. It dropped at midnight. No warning. A deepfake of Miriam appeared online. She was caught in a hidden camera interview with Western journalists, mocking the people of Burkina Faso, calling them gullible, easy to fool, and too emotional to understand politics. The video racked up 2 million views by dawn. Protests erupted outside her office. Rocks thrown. Windows smashed. She was evacuated under armed escort. Inside the safe house, her hands trembled as she watched the footage. It looked like her. Sounded like her. Even her mother called in tears. "They're destroying everything I've ever built," she whispered. Captain Sorrow, now recovering, leaned forward. "No. They're afraid of what you're still building." President Traoré gathered the core team. Seko, Sorrow, Nadej, Awa. "We need to shift the battlefield," he said. "They control the global narrative. We strike where they can't edit the footage." Seko nodded. "We go to the people. Live. Uncut. Raw." And so, they launched Project Ground Truth. 10 cities. 10 days. Each day, Miriam would broadcast live from a different village or city. No scripts. No editing. Just the people. She'd walk with them. Eat with them. Speak with them. Let the truth defend itself. But Spectre wasn't finished. Day 7, assassination attempt. In Kédougou, during a live broadcast, a motorcycle drove past the crowd, firing a single shot. It missed. Barely. The bullet hit the microphone, sparking on impact. Chaos followed. But Miriam didn't stop. She picked up the damaged mic, still live, and said into the camera, "They can't stop me with bullets, because my truth is not just mine. It belongs to the mothers, the children, the workers, and the ancestors who built this land." That clip went viral in 17 African countries. Hashtag I Stand With Miriam trended for 3 days. Dozens of journalists across the continent pledged to join the Ground Truth campaign. Spectre tried to drown them in noise, but the noise was met with song. And then, Spectre made a mistake. A bot farm they used in Lagos glitched during a software update. It exposed the metadata for a dozen fake Miriam-related stories. Nadej traced them to a server chain registered under a shell company. The company was linked to Delgado's collapsed gold empire, and that shell company was co-owned by a former minister in West Africa. Spectre had ties to elected power. Real names. Real people. Now vulnerable. President Traoré went live that night. Miriam is not a liar. She is our mirror. And if the mirror shows you something ugly, it is not the mirror's fault. He paused, then dropped the hammer. Today, we unmask those behind these attacks. Their fingerprints are digital, but their motives are old. Greed, fear, and power. A list of 12 names followed. Interpol alerts were issued. Bank accounts frozen. Embassies scrambled. But Spectre doesn't lose twice. Deep in their vault, they opened a final file. One last operation. A direct strike. Codename: Echo Reversal. Objective: capture Traoré alive. Broadcast his forced confession. Then wipe Burkina Faso's entire digital infrastructure. Total blackout. The first blackout didn't happen in the capital. It started quietly. A village in the north lost power. Then a small town in the east reported internet outages. Cell towers went dark. At first, no one thought much of it. Burkina Faso had dealt with infrastructure problems for decades. But this time was different. Because this time, The silence was spreading. Inside the presidential command center, Nadej sat frozen in front of her screen. The network map was crashing in real time. Red lights pulsed across the grid. "Sir," she whispered, "they're not hitting individual sites. They've corrupted the central kernel, the root code of our entire national system." Traoré leaned in. Meaning in less than 2 hours, there will be no phones, no banks, no news, no cameras, no GPS, nothing. A slow horror filled the room. Saro looked around. "What about military comms?" She shook her head. "Dead in 90 minutes. Mox." President Traoré stood. "Then we have 90 minutes to change the story." Spectre's plan was in motion. They didn't need to assassinate the president. Not yet. They were about to erase the country around him. And once Burkina Faso systems collapsed, they'd release a leaked confession. A deep fake of Traoré admitting he faked the gold recovery, staged Saro's rescue, and used Mariam's documentaries to cover foreign deals. The final weapon wasn't violence. It was discreditation at scale. Day 0, 9:21 p.m. The capital flickered once, then fell dark. Traffic lights died. ATMs froze mid-transaction. The national broadcast signal cut to static. Hospitals switched to emergency generators. The people came out of their homes, looked at one another, and knew something was wrong. Not power failure. Not weather. This was silence with intent. Inside the palace, backup power surged to life. Traoré stood with Saro, Mariam, Seko, Awa, and Nadej. They formed a ring. The final firewall. "What's the move?" Saro asked. Traoré stared at the ceiling. "We can't outcode them. We can't outrun them. But we can outstory them." Mariam blinked. "You want to broadcast while the grid dies?" "Yes." Plan Delta was activated. A military-grade mobile satellite truck, kept off-grid, was rolled into the courtyard. Its signal could reach as far as Senegal, Mali, Niger, and Nigeria. If they could push one final broadcast before the net went dark, they could warn Africa, expose Spectre, show the names, and most importantly, speak the truth one last time. At 10:13 p.m., the truck was in place. Cameras prepped. A solar-powered emergency generator began to hum. They had 10 minutes of signal. No script. No teleprompter. Just light and a microphone. President Traoré stepped forward. Live. He looked directly into the lens. "My name is Ibrahim Traoré. If you're hearing this, the lights in my country have gone out. But not because of our failure. Because of their fear. Spectre, a foreign intelligence coalition, has attacked our networks. They want to erase everything we've built. The gold, the schools, the water, the hope. They say I'm a liar. Then ask, where's the gold now? They say we are criminals. Then ask, why does truth need to be buried beneath silence? This is not just about me, or Burkina Faso. This is about every African nation standing up and saying, we will not be data. We will not be mines. We will not be pawns. We are sons and daughters of the soil, and we are not afraid of the dark." He paused. His face softened. "And if they cut this feed, remember, the light is not in your phone. It's in you." The screen faded. The signal dropped. And then, total blackout. Across the capital, darkness reigned. The silence was complete, except for one thing. In villages and cities, a strange sound began to rise. Not fear, not panic. Voices, repeating the speech. Line by line. Mothers whispering to children. Youth reciting it under stars. Old men banging drums. Truth carried not by signal, but by soul. But in the shadows, Spectre wasn't done. Inside a hidden compound near Ouagadougou, armed men moved toward their next objective. Their target, the presidential safe house. Inside that house, Saro, Mariam, and Nadej were sheltering civilians, refugees, and children. Spectre's orders were clear. Capture Mariam alive. Kill Saro. Destroy every hard drive on site. And in the courtyard, 2 unknown men were already moving through the darkness. Inside, Mariam placed a sleeping baby in a blanket near a candle. She heard a footstep. Her spine stiffened. She reached for her radio. But it was dead. Silence in the dark is never just silence. Sometimes it hums. Sometimes it breathes. And sometimes it moves with intent. The safe house. 2 Uhr 3 nachts. Nestled deep in an abandoned colonial district near the Ouagadougou rail line, the safe house looked like nothing. Dusty shutters, rusted gates, no visible cameras. But inside, it held the last remnants of hope. Hard drives containing government backups, testimonies from villagers, footage of specters exposed operations, and the people who had refused to break. Sorrow, still healing, but armed. Miriam, now a symbol of resistance. Nadege, the tech mind specter hadn't cracked. And 30 civilians, half of them children, refugees, witnesses, orphans of war. The power was out. Backup batteries were failing. Radios had gone quiet. And now something was outside. 3 shadows crept along the compound wall. Black boots, muzzle silencers, retinal night vision goggles. Mercenaries, Spectre's finest. Their mission was clean. Enonois, Enumersi, Enosirvaives. Inside, Miriam leaned against a wall, breathing shallow. The candle beside her flickered, not from wind, from vibration. She rose. Quietly. Checked the hallway. Sorrow appeared beside her, barefoot, pistol drawn, blood still bandaged on his side. "You feel that?" he asked. Miriam nodded. "They're here." 2 gunmen breached the back door. The lock was melted with a silent burner. They stepped in, laser scope sweeping. But as the first one turned left, a blade slid across his throat. He dropped. Silent. Sorrow caught the second in the chest. No hesitation. One shot. The body dropped beside the pantry. Miriam ran to the nursery room, locking it from inside. Nadege was huddled with 3 children, hands trembling. "They're not after the gold anymore," Miriam whispered. "They're after us." Outside, more shadows moved. A third team entered through the roof. Ropes, glass cutters, EMP grenades. They were heading straight for the hard drive vault. And unknown to everyone inside, one of the civilians, a teenage boy, was not a refugee. He was Spectre, planted 3 days earlier, trained to play mute. Now his moment had come. In the basement, Sorrow armed the booby traps. Tripwires on staircases. Steel doors with fallback locks. He turned to Nadege. "You still have the drone uplink." "Manual only. If I can reach the antenna without being seen." "Then we have 5 minutes." She nodded and bolted for the ladder. In the courtyard, a whisper of footsteps. The planted Spectre teen was moving, knife hidden in his waistband. He slipped behind the vault room. Nadege reached the rooftop. Sky dark. No stars. She flipped open the antenna dish, realigned it toward Molly's airspace. Signal searching. Searching. Ping. Satellite locked. She typed in one line. "Safe house under attack. Need extraction." Location sent. Battery, 6%. Below, chaos began. The third team reached the hard drive room. One mercenary knelt to begin detonation prep, his gloves glowing faintly under a UV marker. But Sorrow was already there. He leapt from the shadows and shot out the light source. In complete darkness, instinct ruled. A scream. 2 gunshots. A grunt. Then silence. When Sorrow emerged, he was limping, bleeding again, but alive. He locked eyes with Miriam. Roof slit. Reinforcements might come. She glanced at the civilians. What if they don't? He didn't answer. And then gunfire erupted. Not from inside. From the street. A roar of engines. Headlights. Burkina Faso Special Forces. Loyalists who never left. They'd intercepted the uplink. Armored trucks pulled into the compound, bullets flying. Miriam pulled children behind overturned furniture. Sorrow dragged a civilian to cover. It was war. 10 minutes later, the last mercenary fell. 1 bullet to the shoulder. 1 kick to the jaw. Sorrow stood over him, panting. "You tell Spectre," he growled. "The soil bleeds, but it doesn't forget." The next morning, President Traoré visited the safe house himself. His face was tight, but when he saw Miriam, he exhaled. "You're safe." She nodded. "Barely." Nadege handed him the drive. "Everything's still here. The truth survived." The president turned to his team. We rebuild. We decentralize. We publish every lie they told, and every truth we bled for. He paused. But we are not done. Because Spectre didn't just try to kill us. He looked around. They tried to rewrite Africa's future. And now it's time to write back. Elsewhere, in a concrete bunker in an unknown country, Spectre watched the footage. Blackout failed. Assassination failed. The safe house burned, but the drive lived. And one voice on the comms whispered, "Initiate fallback. Send in the Americans." 1 week after the safe house raid, silence returned, but this time it felt rehearsed. The streets of Ouagadougou were swept clean. Soldiers stood straighter. News anchors wore brighter colors. For the first time in months, the national grid stabilized. But beneath the quiet, everyone could feel it. This was not peace. It was something else. It was a pause before a negotiation. At 8 a.m. sharp, 3 jets landed at the military airstrip just outside the capital. Not from neighboring countries. Not from the African Union. These jets wore stars and stripes. A U.S. diplomatic security team, accompanied by civilian advisors. They wore plain suits, spoke softly, and smiled too easily. Their mission officially was to aid in Burkina Faso's cybersecurity reform and peaceful transition to open democratic trade pathways. Unofficially, they were here to contain the wildfire that had escaped Spectre's hands. Inside the presidential chamber, President Ibrahim Traoré stood before a long mahogany table. On one end, his loyal core, Mariam, Soro, Nadej, Seko, Ministabao. On the other, a U.S. delegation. Their lead, Ambassador Richard Carlson, wore rimless glasses and a perfectly creased smile. "We come in friendship," he said, "to help stabilize your institutions in the wake of your digital turbulence." Soro raised an eyebrow. "You mean the cyber attack funded by Spectre?" Carlson's smile didn't fade. "Let's not point fingers. Let's look forward." He pushed a folder forward. Inside, a proposed cybersecurity treaty. Foreign advisors to supervise Burkina Faso's digital infrastructure. Real-time access to gold production metrics. Shared control over national broadcast systems to prevent disinformation. And the biggest clause, a multinational committee of trust, based in Europe, would manage all aid tied to gold revenues. Mariam read the document in stunned silence. "This isn't a treaty," she said. "It's a leash." Seko nodded. "This is what they do. When force fails, they offer paper. And the ink is always made from your blood." But the pressure was real. Just days earlier, Traoré had spoken fire. Now he was being offered peace. Money. Access. Support. All wrapped in protocol and false smiles. And outside, the people were tired. They wanted food, not speeches. Safety, not suspense. Even loyal ministers were beginning to whisper, "Maybe we need the Americans. Maybe we should sign something for now." At midnight, Traoré sat alone in his office. The treaty folder still lay open. The light above flickered once. Outside, rain began to fall. He picked up a pen and paused. Elsewhere, inside a soundproof room, Ambassador Carlson was on a secure call. He hasn't signed yet. He's stalling. Live from a school built with recovered gold funds. Behind her, students chanted, "We are the voice. We are the gold." The video spread like wildfire. People remembered. They remembered who gave them water, who protected the miners, who returned what was stolen. That night, Traoré called a live national address. His face was firm. "Nongue. Just steal. I've been offered a treaty," he said. "A treaty that gives away our voice in exchange for stability. A treaty that calls our gold a shared resource, but shares it only in one direction." He held up the document. "This is not partnership. This is prepackaged surrender, and I will not sign it." The people erupted in cheers across the country. But in the embassy, Carlson's smile finally cracked. The next day, the IMF issued sanctions. Trade halted. Loans froze. News outlets screamed. Burkina Faso turns away Western aid. Traoré's gamble, national pride or economic suicide? But something happened no one predicted. West African youth, Nigeria, Ghana, Senegal, Mali, rose online. Hashtag our gold. Hashtag our soil. Hashtag Africa can't stand. Thousands began donating, sharing, translating. Burkina Faso was no longer standing alone. It had become a symbol. But in the shadows, Spectre activated its last embedded cell. Not soldiers, not drones, but a minister inside Traoré's own cabinet. A man who had smiled for the cameras, raised his glass at dinners. Now he held a private USB. Inside every blueprint, every fail-safe, every countermeasure Burkina Faso had left. He inserted it into a laptop. File transfer 1%. Watch out for part 2, where the Judas inside will be revealed.